and live.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the MES Human Resources Committee meeting. I hope, even though we're almost at the end of January, I hope everyone had a good holiday and is ready to begin the new year. The two items on the agenda include the approval of minutes from our last Human Resources Committee meeting on October 18 of 2022. And then the second item will be a overview from Melissa Slatnick with regard to proposed changes to the electrician and mechanic career ladder. So with that in mind, I guess I would ask the committee members if there are any comments or questions with regard to the draft minutes to the October 18, 2022 Human Resources Committee meeting minutes.
I've read all that and I have no response. It's fine, and I agree with it.
Thank you, Judge.
I agree as well.
Thank you, Mr. Witt.
Thank you.
Hearing no comments, concerns, the past meeting minutes from October 18, 2022 will be approved. Thank you, everyone. And the next item on the agenda will be a presentation by Melissa Slatnick with regard to the proposed changes to the career ladder for electricians and mechanics.
Great, thank you. Good morning.
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 So similar to what we did with the operator classification and then with the environmental specialist series classification, the managing directors in coordination with our HR department went through and took a look at both the mechanic and the electrician series. We found that we had difficulty filling those positions for mechanics and electricians. And when we filled them, we were having problems retaining them. Some of that was improved when we changed our classification grades and our salaries, but we were still struggling a bit. And we thought another improvement we could make was to clean up the series a little bit, as well as go through and add training, certification, that sort of thing, so that was a clear career path for both mechanics and electricians.
Do you mind if I ask do you mind if I ask a quick question, because it goes over the entire operation? Is there, or are you going to talk about how there'll be a merger from one area to the other as we bring these up into new areas? So, you know, you have people now who are electricians, et cetera, et cetera. So where will they go when these new things come in? That's basically what and you might already have it in there. I just read it and I couldn't quite see how that would go.
Yep, for the most part, we audited folks that were in the series already. We did reduce the classifications of mechanics from 18 to 10 and electricians from 10 to 7, but a lot of those classifications didn't have staff currently in those positions. And anyone who was in a position or a classification that was getting removed or updated, it was usually a lateral move and we just changed their title. So there was no major impact to anyone's classification or grade through this. We really just cleaned it up and got rid of a lot of excess classifications where we did not have staff in those positions.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So like I said, we reduced the number of mechanic classifications by 8, and we reduced the number of electrician classifications, but we ended up adding 2. So we cut those in half to 5, but added 2 more and made 7. Reason being that there were some that were just very duplicative. There were classifications that were basically the same position, the same grade, the same requirements, but they had 2 different titles. So just to make things more fluid, we cleaned those up. For the mechanic classification series, we broke that up into 2 different tracks. One that's technical, and it goes from a trainee to a mechanic, a senior mechanic, a lead mechanic, a senior lead mechanic. So we changed that to make it a very technical series where you could move through the series with advancement in certifications and skills classes and training and that sort of thing. We made the titles a little bit more fluid to match what we did with the environmental specialist series, but we also took the mechanic series and broke out a second group for maintenance supervisors, senior maintenance supervisors, lead maintenance supervisors. We had one person whose title was a manager of mechanical projects, so we retained that one, but then also added senior lead maintenance supervisor. This way, if you're in the mechanic series, you have both avenues to go through. If you want to stay technical and continue in a very technical career and move through the series, you can. But if you also have interest in becoming a supervisor, you can then move into the supervisor series. So there is some overlap there. Both series require training and education, but the supervisor series requires more supervisory and management classes, that sort of thing. Any questions on that one?
No.
No? Okay. And then the other series we did at the same time is the electrician series. We kind of did these hand in hand because we found that a lot of the staff who were coming in as mechanics were changing to electricians because they could change their grade, or coming in as electricians and really didn't have the skills, so they were going to mechanics. So we wanted to clean both of these up at the same time. With the electrician series, we actually added a new electrician apprentice. The old series went from a trainee to an electrician. There was no grade 3. Trainee required 0 experience, and an electrician required 3 years experience. By adding the apprentice in there, we could credit people who had up to 18 months of experience. So bring them in at a higher grade without having them wait to get up to 3 years experience to get that electrician 1 grade and salary. And I think that did help because we were able to have a higher salary point there for people who had a little bit of experience. We also changed the very most senior electrician position to a master electrician. That's a grade 10. And we added additional education requirements for licensing for our higher level electricians and becoming a master electrician to hit that grade 10, the highest level of the electrician series. Any questions with that one?
Melissa, I do have a couple of questions. I guess with respect to the electrician classification series, based on the charts that are provided, it appears that I'm trying to, I guess my overall question is, to achieve some of these supervisory levels, is there a situation where, and I think you answered that, where an actual course, some educational coursework would be required as opposed to just simply experience? I think what you're saying is those instances would be applicable to the master electrician.
Right. So the master electrician, in order to get to that level, of course, unless you're already grandfathered in at a grade 10, you would have to obtain your master electrician license. So you couldn't get to that highest level without that license. As well as the levels before that, where you're a senior lead electrician, you couldn't reach that level until you received your journey person certification. So those higher classifications require that licensing. And then to move through the more junior level classifications, there still is training and certification requirements, but not the licensing.
Okay. And what about, and the same question is with regard to the mechanic classification series. Are a maintenance supervisor or senior maintenance supervisor, can you apply experience in all of those instances, or do you need a required degree?
No, the mechanics and the electricians do not require degrees. They require experience, and to move through the classification, they require training or certifications or things like that. So to move through the supervisor series, part of that training that is required would be supervisory or management training. But all the grades now require some type of new training or certification to move up in grades. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is you couldn't just rely on your experience to move up to the next grade.
No, you'd have to have additional coursework that you did, training, specialized training for the type of equipment you work on, and then for the supervisory track, you'd also have to have supervisory training or courses or things like that. So everyone would be required to increase their education and their knowledge in order to move, irregardless if you were on the technical track or the management track.
Okay, but it would apply to all of those positions. The reason why I'm asking is because there arose an earlier concern several months ago about the ability to be promoted based on your experience alone. Okay, and I guess
Right.
what's a little confusing is that if I'm looking at the columns in the handout that was given to me, it may not be on the presentation that you have on the screen, but it talks about where you lay out these additional credits or educational requirements. The column is titled substitution for experience. So that's why it seemed as though you could have experience or the substitution. So I wasn't sure how that worked, but you're saying in order to be promoted to the next level, you do need to get additional accreditation or coursework.
Right, and that column, substitution for experience, that comes from our original job descriptions, whereas if you were coming as a new employee and you didn't have as many years experience, you could use your vocational school or something like that as experience, and that's mostly for people coming in to MES as new employees if they don't meet the minimum experience qualifications. That doesn't have to do with moving through the series.
And a couple of other general questions. Have staff who are holding some of these positions, have you gotten any feedback or input from them as well?
Yes, actually, as we started to develop this, we spoke to staff in both these classifications to find out, what would the expectations be? Is it possible to get 2 training courses to move? We got their input for that new apprentice position. So, I think, bless you, most of the staff were encouraged when the grades for most of these were updated from our salary survey, so that they were happy to find that we were organizing a little bit better too and filling in the blanks where there wasn't positions but grades skipped.
And I know MES has a educational reimbursement policy, so a lot of these accredited vocational school requirements, for instance, the tuition charges would be covered through MES's programs.
Yes, so generally these could be covered through training, through their position, or through the MES tuition reimbursement program, because this would be furthering their MES career.
Okay. And the last question, I think, the last, under the mechanic classification series, I see that when you reach the supervisory levels, the titles change over to maintenance supervisor and senior maintenance supervisor. Is there any reason why you didn't, excuse me, you didn't continue using the term mechanic as opposed to changing it to maintenance?
We had a lot of staff with those various maintenance supervisor titles. And so we wanted to try to keep some of the structure we had before. And those people who have the maintenance supervisor titles, they generally have staff underneath of them. So by having some overlap between the maintenance supervisor titles and the mechanic titles, you sort of have flexibility for staff if they want to become supervisors or if they just want to stay sort of, you know, in their lane and do their job and not have the staff underneath of them. So.
I'm not sure that, I mean, I see where you're saying there's overlap, but okay.
Yep, the maintenance supervisor series was already established. So we didn't create that. Those were already established classifications that we had. We just sort of combined those with the mechanic series.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you're combining them, why wouldn't you just call them mechanic supervisor, senior mechanic supervisor?
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't.
I think some of the maintenance supervisors though are electricians.
Well, they have electricians underneath
Need
them
too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a broader classification.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could have made that its own separate table, but for, you know, ease of reviewing all of this together, we put the supervisors in with the mechanics. I mean, they could really be there.
We could pull it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason why I raise it, and I don't mean to be, well.
No problem.
I guess I would defer to staff and actually to the persons holding those positions, because sometimes when you refer to maintenance, you're thinking of just simply, you know, housekeeping matters.
Oh, I see.
So that's, you know, unless you want to put maintenance / mechanic, but it's just a thought. I'm going to just defer to HR on this matter, and perhaps any additional input you might get from persons in those positions. But it just seemed as though it was more housekeeping as opposed to electric or mechanical matters.
I see what you're saying, right? Yeah, I can understand the interpretation that way. Okay.
And especially when you have the entire series being designated as mechanic, and then it just changes over. But other than that, those are the only comments I have.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question, but I just have a comment. I want to say great job. I like the way that the classifications raised with the certifications, because you're matching pay as they become more marketable elsewhere, especially on the electrician side.
Right. Yep, that was the goal.
Any other comments, Judge Smolkin?
No, I think it's a good plan, and the thing is that it's not hurting anybody, as far as I can tell. And if that's it, that is extremely, to me, important. So I see it that way, and I've listened to everything and read it, and I understand why it's why it's being done. It's good for MES, and it's good for the people that work there, as far as I can tell. That's why you're doing it. So, thank you.
Right. Thank you.
With that, I think we do need a motion for approving the classification series for mechanics and electricians so that we can make a recommendation to the board at its next meeting.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye, with.
Fred Smolkin.
And I, Marion. So the motion has passed.
Well,
And I
thank
think-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank everybody else. I know it's put a lot of work to you, and I think it's going to be a good part of MES. And again, I'm really always interested in the people, and the people are what makes things work here, no question. So thank you very much, and so long for me. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
1 week.
And this
1
is,
week.
so we'll conclude our meeting, and everyone have a good rest of the day.